Hello and welcome to the Addicts Anonymous podcast. I'm your host, Jamar. Today's episode 167, and we're going to be interviewing Birdman drug stories. How you doing, Birdman?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me on.
I'm glad to have you. Thank you for doing this. I really appreciate you taking the time.
No problem.
So let's get started here. Tell me about your childhood and growing up.
Uh, so my childhood growing up was, everyone's childhood is normal to them, but my parents were immigrants from Portugal, so they didn't speak much English or anything. They came here. They were factory workers, and I had a pretty normal upbringing. Other than I guess the part that would maybe not be so normal was that drinking was accepted at like a really young age. Like, I could sneak drinks when I was like in elementary school at family parties, and my older cousins would think it was funny to get me, who was the younger cousin, to get me drunk, and I was all for it. So I used to look forward to these family parties just so I could like sneak a drink and get messed up, even at a young age, before any drugs came in a picture. Even though alcohol obviously is a drug, alcohol was okay, where everything else was forbidden and looked down upon. So my childhood was pretty normal. Drinking was okay, and I used to love to look forward to get drunk at family parties. I played soccer as a kid.
What are your
Um,
first memories of getting drunk at parties?
that's so. I'm 38 years old, so we're going way back in the time machine for that one. I'm talking probably elementary school. I would sneak a couple. By junior high, I was getting drunk almost every weekend that I could, because there'd always be a family party. Portuguese people had lots of family events, birthday parties, and anniversaries. There's always a party going on when I was younger. And I remember just looking forward to that party. In junior high, I would get completely wasted um, every time that I could, which was almost every weekend. And like I said, it wasn't looked down upon. It was pretty much normal to drink in that type of environment where drugs, again, were forbidden. Like, if I was to get caught smoking a joint, I'd be in big trouble. If I was caught drinking, it would be like, oh, look at him being a kid.
Gotcha. So when you were getting really drunk, was that with your family or were you drinking young with friends also?
Mostly with family. And then as I got into like freshman year of high school, then I would more so get drunk with my friends. Whoever's parents might have been out of town for the night, we would go to either my house or my friends' houses and we'd steal a bottle from. I had a full bar in my basement, in the house I grew up. So when I was a freshman, there's so many bottles of liquor. I'll grab one from the back, grab one from the back, grab one from the back. I did that all through high school. And by the time I got done with high school, I pretty much had taken down my father's whole bar. And they never said anything about it. They knew, but they didn't really say much.
Really? That's even at that young age, you didn't really care about you getting hammered.
And they weren't co-signing it. They weren't saying it was more of a culture thing. They weren't co-signing, yeah, son, go out and get hammered this weekend with your older cousins. But I knew that I knew that's what I would go do at the family parties, was try to get drunk. I Even at a young age, I like the feeling of being messed up. I like the feeling of like getting out of yourself, escaping yourself. And I used to do that at a young age through alcohol. Until I started smoking some pot, early into high school. But before that, I used to love to drink.
Was there something you were trying to escape?
Yeah, probably some trauma as a kid. I had
What
some
type of
traumatic
trauma?
things happen to me while I was a kid. Just just like some you know, an older cousin of mine kind of took some weird pedophile type liberties with me back in the day. And he was like my older cousin, and he was well liked within the family. So everybody was like, why can't you be more like that guy? And I'm like, that guy's like molesting me when you motherfuckers ain't around. So I think I was trying to escape the trauma, molestation from an older cousin. I buried that for many years. I didn't even let the cat out of the bag for that. I buried that deep my whole entire life until deep in my drug addiction, I finally like said something. By then, I was looked at like I was a liar, and I was just being a drug addict. I couldn't be trusted with what I was saying. But the truth was, I had buried it for many years and not told anybody because I was embarrassed of it. So I think that's what I was trying to escape, was a weirdo older cousin and kind of get drunk and forget about what was going on. And I think that's what pushed me to more hardcore drugs as I got older too.
So you were just scared to tell anybody, I guess, because he was the popular one.
Oh, I didn't think anybody would believe me. I was at a young age the black sheep and the degenerate in the family, and he was you know, got good grades, never got in trouble in school. So he was looked at more fondly than I was. And that used to drive me crazy, which is, my family asked me why I can't be more like that guy when that guy is doing evil things behind the scenes. It was a real conundrum I was in for a long time. And like I said, I think that pushed me deeper into drug addiction. I think that was also what pushed me to drink at the young age because I wanted to get messed up. A, I thought it was fun at the time. And then B, I just wanted to forget about the bad stuff that was going on behind the scenes.
How was life growing up in school?
Oh, I was always trying to fit in. I guess like most addicts or recovered addicts, I was trying to fit in really. And a good way for me to fit in after like the awkward junior high phase, I found that a good way to fit in is if you like smoked weed. All right. So if I got into smoking weed, everybody would be down to hang out after school. We would just go, smoke weed, go on a blunt ride, and that's like what we used to look forward to, and that's a good way that I'd be able to fit in with people. All right, for example, if there's a girl I had a crush on in high school, right? I'd be too nervous to ask her like on a date. But if you ask her, hey, you want to smoke a joint after school? I found myself a lot more comfortable, using the weed as a way to fit in. And then with worser drugs down the line, always using drugs to fit in. And I didn't know anything about drug addiction, and I'm not claiming I was like a pot addict, but I would smoke weed every day back then, only until I got into worse drugs, and then I could really care less about weed. Once I got into more serious type drugs, I didn't care too much about weed anymore. But weed was just a way to fit in high school. Getting drunk and smoking weed was a good way to have lots of friends in high school, I guess.
Yeah, it definitely helps. Try to be like one of the cool kids. People, for some reason, when we're young, we think the kids who do the drugs and the quote unquote outlaws, whatever you want to call them, they're cool,
Yeah, and I was always attracted to it because there's such a stigma in my family about drug addicts and drug addiction that it really, instead of pushing me away from that life, it really embraced me into it. I wanted to see someone tells you, don't touch that stove, it's really hot. I was the type I want to go touch it and make sure that you weren't lying to me. So even though I knew drugs, from what I was told, could lead to horrible things in your life, I wanted to kind of go out and find out for myself. Like I said, it was more of a way of fitting in. Everybody, if you got an ounce of weed, everybody's gonna be your friend. If they're into smoking. Same thing later on in life. If you hang out with some cocaine addicts and you have an 8-ball of coke, you're everybody's best friend until that 8-ball is gone, and then it's every man for himself.
How'd you do in school, like as far as grades and stuff, growing up, like when you were young?
Freshman year, I did all right. I got
What about younger than that? Go back, like when you were real young. Did it affect your
really young.
school and stuff? The fact that
Yeah,
you were getting hammered on the weekends?
I would get A's and B's through school.
Okay.
And then in high school, freshman year, I got A's and B's. I started as my substances went up, my grades went down. So the more weed I was smoking, the less homework I was doing, and the less I was studying. And it came to a point where I wasn't doing too good. I barely graduated high school. My senior year, I got, a 60 is the lowest grade, at least back then. A 60 is the lowest grade you can get and still pass. My senior year, I was in the 60s for every class. So I barely passed every single class, literally by a point or two on some of them, because I was starting to care more about drugs and living that life. And like once I started like selling a little bit of weed, then I wanted to be like a weed dealer. That was my dream, which was a stupid dream in hindsight. But
No, growing up, I saw weed, and I used to think about wanting to do that for like a living. If there's any way of making that my full-time job.
yeah,
Yeah, I used to think about that stupid shit all the time.
yeah, it's same thing. As I got older, same thing with the cocoa. Once people got into doing worse things, I was the first one there, like ready to go do bad things too. Like, oh, we're into cocaine now, great. Oh, ecstasy pills are the next thing. Let's hop on those. And then the real game changer through years of cocaine, ecstasy abuse was the thing that really turned me into what I'd say a drug addict, where I classified or identified myself as a drug addict was I got into Percocets, Perc 30s, Oxycontin 80s. This was about 2007. Uh, I did those for well over 5 years every day. Where now I went from doing the party drugs to I'm just a drug addict at this point, hitting lower lows and being sick if you don't have them, having to lie, cheat, and steal to get the drugs to not be sick. Um, the pills were the game changer. I always say once I got into opiates, all bets are off. And my life was already going bad, but it took a steep downhill turn. And it went straight downhill when I got into pills.
So nobody noticed when you were young with the stuff going on, like your teachers in school, they even noticed that you were partying, or did you keep it straight laced during school?
No, I didn't. I would smell like weed every day. My teachers would send me to the principal's office because we all smelled like weed. Me and my friends, we go there. And now my parents' house is directly across from the high school we graduated from. So my parents would be at work and they'd leave early in the morning, and I'd have my crew of my high school friends come over, and we'd all roll up blunts and smoke before school. Now, when we go into school, we all still smell like weed. So it was no secret that I was going down the wrong road. But then again, weed and drinking, that's kind of, at least back then in my area, that's what everybody used to do, was get drunk and smoke weed in high school. And from what I've heard and seen, that's pretty much everybody's upbringing for the most part, is that you're going to experiment with weed, you're going to experiment with alcohol. The difference is not everybody's going to take that next jump and the next step into the worst drugs.
Exactly. Yeah, no, it's very common, weed and alcohol, especially
If I wasn't
beer.
out of control or anything, like I'd be late to school, but I'd show up. I'd get good grades on tests, but I wouldn't do my homework, so it'd average out to like a barely passing score, and that was good enough for me. I had no idea what I was gonna be in life. I didn't think I was gonna be a drug addict either, but I was just lost. I didn't know what I wanted to do or what I wanted to be, and everything that I looked up to was bad things. I would look up to drug dealers. I look up to the local degenerates, and I'd want to be like those guys instead of, say, being like someone who's doing positive things. I would always be drawn into the negative for some reason.
And all your friends around you were into this stuff too?
Yeah, I was actually the last one to get into hardcore drugs out of my inner group of friends. Like, they started smoking weed before I did. I'm like, hey guys, I was like, I just drink, but you guys are smoking weed now. That's a little bit too much. And then I started smoking weed, and I was smoking weed every day. I'm like, guys, I might smoke weed and drink all the time, but you guys are doing cocaine now, guys. Cocaine, you're sniffing things in your nose. I'm like, that's really bad. And it was all fine and dandy until that first night I tried a line of coke, and I fell in love with that. And the same could be said from the next graduation onto the ecstasy pills, and Molly would be after that. I would talk bad about it until I tried it and I'd fall in love with it. Now the ecstasy pills are off that list too. We would take ecstasy pills every single weekend for probably about a 3 year span. And like 2007 to 2010, I was taking ecstasy pills every Thursday, every Friday, every Saturday night, and just going out and living that clubbing life. Um, and the same thing after that, the next thing was I heard that kids around town were starting to do perk 30s. I'm like, perk 30s. I'm like, guys, you guys are definitely gone way too far. I heard that's kind of like heroin. And then I tried a perk 30, and the rest is history. I turned into a heroin addict at the end of it.
The perk 30s have the letter M on one side and 30 on the other, right?
Yeah, some of them were like that. That was just what brand it is, be it M. They had other brand, which was an A. It would have an A and then like a 312 on it. There's like
Yeah,
three or
yeah,
four
yeah, yeah. I
ones.
remember that. It's funny
The
how us
one,
drug addicts, we know the pills.
yeah. And there's one of them that was like, it was a V, and we all hated the V blue Percocets. They had a V on it. And the reason we hated them, because we all crushed them up to sniff them. That's how we would use them. And these blue ones with the V were like rock solid. Like, you couldn't even crush on a CD case. This is back in the days of CD cases still in the car. So I take out my
Yeah.
CD car. I go with my ID. I go crush the V, and it wouldn't crush. It would shatter the CD case. So at that point, I had to take it into a bill, roll up in a bill, and then crush it with a lighter because it was so freaking hard. For some reason, the V's were really hard. I think they made them that way so to discourage people from sniffing them, but that didn't stop us. We would have tools and grinders. And I don't know if you remember in the Oxycontin days, they would have that little like God, what was it? It's like a little strip. It's like a metal strip, and you would kind of shave the pill on it. All the pill
Really?
heads, all the pill heads had it back in the day. I'm trying to think of what its legitimate use would be for, but it was almost like a cheese grater, right? Like a strip that looks like a cheese grater, and that's how you would crush up the Oxycontin pills back
No
in the day.
shit.
Yeah, all the professional pill heads back then had when they take out like they take out their backseat of the car, they'd have the little strip like, all right, here, use this. I'm like, well, you guys are real professionals. But the thing is, everybody then started graduating from the pills. The pills dried up, and everybody got onto the dope, and that's when things got really bad.
Let's backtrack a little bit. Going, so the first thing you tried after weed and booze was cocaine.
Yeah, and
How did you like cocaine?
well, I loved it because I was the only reason I would even try cocaine for the first time is because I was so drunk after a party. Like we went to like I think it was a graduation party. Someone was graduating high school, right? And I was so drunk after his party. My friend's like, "Hey, you got your car?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's up there." He goes, let's go get a cigar or something. So me and him, we go. This is stupid. I'm like drunk driving. I'm 20 years old. I'm driving to get a cigar to smoke some weed. And I get back to the party. He goes, "Hey," he goes, "you want to try this?" And he takes out a big bag of coke. I had never even seen cocaine before. I didn't know how much he had. So I said, "Yes, I'm fucked up. Why not? Let's do it." And he breaks out a line for me, and he goes, "Listen, I've done coke for the first time with people before, and sometimes they remember to sniff up." I'm like, "Sniff up?" He goes, "Yeah, sniff up." I'm like, "Okay, I got it." So I go down to the CD case with the bill, and I do not sniff up. I sniff out, and I blow the coke all over the car. All over it. An Acura Integra, a '97 Acura Integra Special Edition. And I actually blew it outward. So this is what now he's getting angry. I'm wasting his coke. I didn't pay for any of it. He goes, "Bird, I told you, sniff up, sniff up." Like, oh, sniff up. I went down again. Boom, I sniffed out, and the same shit happened about 3 to 4 times. And finally, he goes, "Bird," he goes, "all right, listen to me. Don't do anything. Put your nose up to it, and now take a deep breath in." I'm like, "Oh, a deep breath in," and I did, and I sniffed it. I'll never forget it. Even though I was so drunk, when that fucking coke hit the top of my nose, I felt like I drank 1,000 Red Bulls. I couldn't believe it. I was on top of the world. I'm like, wow, this is great. And me and him sat there and we did lines the whole entire night until the morning came up. I dropped him off at his mother's house. The sun was coming up. The birds were chirping, and we had partied too hard. This is my first cocaine experience. I didn't realize that he had. I didn't realize he had an 8 ball of it. How much an 8 ball even was. So the next day, I'm like, wow, that was fun last night. I'm gonna get some more of that cocaine stuff. So I call one of my other friends who I knew he was into it. Or I said, "Hey, I tried coke last night and I love it. I'm gonna get some today. So you want to throw down?" He goes, "Yeah." So we each throw down $20. I go meet my cousin at the time, and I tell him that I got a cocaine sale, but it's not for me. It's for my buddy, so he wouldn't think it was for me. And I see him, and a little 40 bag of coke ain't that big, so he gave it to me. I thought my cousin ripped me off. I got home, I'm like, "Dude, this is like nothing." So I called my boy from the night before that had the 8 ball. I said, "Hey man, I think my cousin just ripped me off." I said, "I gave him $40. This is all I got." Like, then I sent him a picture, right? He goes, "Oh, that's a pretty straight 40 bag. He didn't rip you off. That's a lot, actually." I said, "That's a lot?" He goes, "Yeah." I go, "Well, how much did we do last night?" He goes, "I had an 8 ball." I said, "What's an 8 ball?" He goes, "It's about $200 worth." And I said, "Thanks, man. I appreciate it." Like, I didn't know he did so much. I thought he did a 20 bag with me. I didn't know he
Yeah.
did $200 worth. So that was my first experience with cocaine, and it was love at first sniff.
Love at first sniff. Yeah, I
That's what
love
I
that shit too. That was good. I don't think people realize how good that stuff could feel. Like the reason it's so dangerous. You know what I mean? Some of that shit, man, just makes you feel so good until it makes you feel so bad.
Yeah, and it was pretty clear that after that story that I just told you, that I was off running with the coke. All I could think about, every dollar that I got was all going towards cocaine to just keep the party going. The
Yeah.
problem was that after years and years go by, and I'm early 20s now, towards the end of my run, I'm in my early to mid 30s. The party's over. I'm not even doing cocaine with friends anymore. I'm just in a room by myself, peeking out the window, and that's how it ends for most people. It's the party ends at some point.
Yeah, I remember when me and my friends used to get coke. At the end, we'd all want to take a little bit home to go be by ourselves with. Because
Yeah,
there's something about getting high by yourself.
which is a weird thing because as cocaine started, I did it. If you remember the beginning, I did it to fit in. It'd be
Yep.
a simple drug so that everybody would hang out and fit in. But as the cocaine addiction got worse, I cared more about the cocaine than I did about the camaraderie. Right, I care more about the substance and the feeling. So you're right. I would tell my friends, "Oh, you got anything left on that 8 ball?" Like, "Oh no, I just ran out." But I go home with about a half an 8 ball just to myself at my mom's house. Go in the basement and sniff by myself and hope that she doesn't hear me in the basement sniffing my brains out. And it was just a sick thing that it starts off fun and games, but it ends, tragically. I got lots of dead friends too. I'm sure you do. Lots of friends I used to get high with are now dead and gone. And it all started innocently enough with, say, cocaine, but we all seem to have graduated and went way overboard and got into worse things, ending in heroin. That's how it ends for most.
So what was the next drug you did after cocaine?
After coke was ecstasy, which I was totally against. Like I said, I would talk shit to my friends, be like, "Hey, I know I do coke. I know I drink and smoke weed, but is ecstasy, guys, that puts holes in your brain. Didn't you guys pay attention in dare class in high school? It put holes in your brains." And they're like, "Yeah, but it feels great." And sure enough, one night I wanted to see what all the hype was about. And my same cousin, I said, "Hey, my friend wants a couple ecstasy pills." I'd always go to this cousin because he sold drugs back in the day. I always say that was for somebody else, but it was always for me. So I buy a couple ecstasy pills. I eat them at my buddy's apartment, and we're sitting there waiting. And they're like, "Bird, you can't just sit there and wait for it to kick in." So I'm like wondering what it's gonna feel like. I'm like, nothing's happening. They're like, "You can't just sit there and wait for it. It might not even work that way." They're like, "Go smoke a blunt and then get your mind off it." So I'm like, okay. I call up my friend Kevin. I pick him up. We go for a blunt ride. I'm like, "Yo, Kevin," I was like, "I took 2 ecstasy pills today." He goes, "No way, you took 2 E pills, Bird?" And I'm like, "Yeah." I was like, "I don't feel it yet." He goes, "You will. When we're done with this ride, you'll feel it." So we go for a ride. I drop him off, and then I drive back to the original apartment. As I walk up there, I walk in there. They go, "Bird, can you feel it?" And someone else goes, "Yeah, he can feel it. Look at him." And I was chewing a Dunkin' Donuts straw, just like
Mm.
gnawing at it, just chewing it and gnawing at it. I was like wicked fucked up. They said they could hear my music from my car was on full blast when I pulled in, just because I was so like messed up from the E. I was on cloud 9, and so I did ecstasy for the first time at my friend's apartment, and I fell in love with it immediately. And then the only thing that got me away from cocaine was pretty much doing a lot of ecstasy. I would jump from one drug to the next.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the ecstasy days were different. I was young. I was in my early 20s. We're going to the club. We're going to the bar. We're getting hotel rooms to throw hotel parties. We would throw hotel parties every weekend, and not like a nice, classy hotel. I'm talking the Motel 6, like
Yeah.
the this hotel in Chicopee, Mass. And we would party there every weekend. We would just take E pills and just like, all hell would break loose. Something crazy would happen every time. But those were the ecstasy days, were right after coke, and it was just looking back on it, it was almost kind of like an innocent time in my life. I was doing drugs, but I had no idea I was or would ever be a drug addict. I still looked at that like that was a dirty word, right? If you're a drug addict, ew, gross, a drug addict. I had no knowledge of the disease or addiction or anything, and I thought I was just partying, having a good time. Um, but like I said, the party always ends at some point.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. Unfortunately, for some people, party ends permanently. Like you
Yeah,
said, losing friends, man, it's
out
crazy.
of it. I was lucky enough to get out of it. Uh, I'm sure we'll get there. I've overdosed multiple times in the same day. I've been in a 5-day coma from a heroin overdose as well. So all those stories are on my channel too. And those are that's where I went from like fun and games and just like living life and being young and dumb to like complete drug addiction, low level drug addict type behavior on my part.
What age were you when that behavior started?
2007, I did my first perk 30. I was actually looking for ecstasy pills that night, and my buddy, who I would sometimes get the ecstasy pills from, goes, "I don't." He goes, "I don't have any ecstasy pills, but I got pills." I'm like, "What do you mean?" He goes, "I got perk 30s." I said, "How much is one of those cost?" He goes, $30. I said, "Man, I could get 3 ecstasy pills for $30. It better be strong." So I pay him for it, and now I'm expecting to be like an ecstasy type high because I'm just thinking pill. And I sniffed the perk 30 pill, and it was not what I was expecting. Um, so I didn't fall in love at first sniff with the opiates. what happened was shortly after that, I was rolling on ecstasy and I got raided for a grow house. We're growing pot up in Massachusetts and we got raided for it. After I got raided for it, I was lots of charges. I had gun charge. I had all kinds of bad shit. I was facing some time and I got really nervous about it. I went to work that day at the dealership. My friend goes, yo, I heard what happened to you. I heard you got raided. You look really stressed out. I'm like, I am. He goes, here, this will calm you down. And sure enough, it's another one of those pills, but this one's a green pill. It's a 15 milligram. I went in the bathroom. I sniffed it. I came out there. I felt like $1,000,000 and I sold 2 cars that day. Now I'm thinking, well, if I can just get these pills every day, I'll be rich because I sniff a pill, I sell 2 cars. That's good math. You know, make a couple hundred per car, $15 for the pill. I could be rich if I can continue just getting these pills. And that's kind of why I went to junkie mode was then. Then it became, you know, not be sick, you know, anything to not be sick. My life revolved for over 5 years around just not to be dope sick or pill sick. And so it was about 2007 where I went from young and dumb to graduating to low level addict. 2007.
So the E really got you.
Yeah, the pills got me.
And then that led to the Percocets, and the Percocets really got you.
The Percocets really had me, and that's
I
why
know this is a dumb question. What did you like more, the Percocet or the ecstasy? Like if I handed you 2 right now, to choose one.
Ecstasy 100 times out of 100. But the thing is, when you're addicted to opiates, if I was currently, like, say, if I was addicted to opiates right now, and you made that same offer, I would take the opiates. No questions asked, 1,000,000%. But if you're saying right now, what would I do? I wouldn't do either. But if I had to do one, I'd do the ecstasy because I wouldn't want to be dope sick again, right? You might have a little hangover from not sleeping and not eating right, but you're not going to be dope sick. So I would stay away from dope sickness. If I had to pick one, that's what I would pick. Just because I didn't get into too much trouble on the ecstasy days, but once I got into the opiates and then the heroin, I started getting, you know, court cases and junkie charges and overdoses and possession charges. I didn't get in much trouble with the e-pills, but I got in plenty of trouble with the other pills.
Tell us about that.
Well, the other pills, well, I needed them, so I run out of money. If I had to rob a pill dealer, that's what I would do. A pill dealer is not going to run to the cops and be like, hey, Birdman stole 100 Percocets from me. You can't go to the cops. So I felt, well, I can rob the drug dealers. They can't do much of anything about it. So I'm obviously I wasn't robbing no gang members or no friggin' super crazy killer tough guys. I'd rob maybe someone was a couple of years younger than me that was trying to sell pills, and I would go rob them. I actually there's a police officer in my town. His brother turned into a pillhead drug addict, and we used to get high together, me and the police officer's brother. My dumbass got desperate one day, told him he wanted 10 pills. So I'd be like, yeah, bring back $250. I'll go get them for you. With the whole plan being, I'm just going to go get 10 pills for myself and tell him that I got robbed. And sure enough, I went, he gave me the money. I went and got the pills. And I texted him, said, hey, man, the kid took off with your money. I'm really sorry. And I took out. So the problem then was he told his older brother about it, who was a cop, and then he started harassing me around town. So here's one thing where, like, I was so desperate to not be sick that I robbed someone that I considered a friend. He was more of a using buddy, but I considered him a friend. But I didn't think twice about robbing him for every dollar he had so that I could get high. I didn't care if he was sick or not. I only cared about myself not being sick. And even though I knew he would probably tell his older brother, who was a cop, I didn't care about that either. I said, well, he can't really arrest me. I just started robbing people for pills all the time. I mean, girls, guys, it didn't matter. I didn't discriminate. If someone hit me up, hey, can you find me 2 pills? But yeah, I can find them for you, but you gotta give me the money first. And they don't like to meet new people, and I'll be right back. And I'll just never come right back. I probably got people still waiting for me on some corner somewhere up in Massachusetts, hoping that I come back with the 2 pills.
That's good.
It was it's I can look back at it now and laugh, but it was no laughing matter at the time. I was looked at like a real degenerate. I was really looked down upon in my hometown up in Massachusetts, that I couldn't be trusted. And I would do anything to anybody just to get high. And I'm talking, I would burn friends, I would burn family, I would burn coworkers, I would burn strangers. It didn't matter who you were. I took no prisoners, and my drug addiction came first. Me not being sick took precedent over everything: jobs, schooling, family, girlfriends, regular friends, it took precedent over everything was just to not be sick because there's nothing as bad as being dope sick. There's no feeling quite as horrible as when you're dope sick.
So when did the heroin come along, and how did it come along?
Heroin came along one day. I had to be at work at the dealership, and I was actually with one of my buddies who sold pills, but he also sold dope at the time. So this is about 2010, 2011 or so. Going strong the whole time with pills, the whole time. Now I had to be at work, and I was starting to get sick, and I was at my friend's house. Like, hey, do you got any pills? He goes, nah, I'm waiting for my guy to call me back. I go, do you got anything? He goes, I only have that stuff that you don't mess with, because he had offered it to me before. I'm like, no heroin. But this time I'm like, all right, man. I said, I only have $20. I said, if I get $20 worth of heroin, I said, I need to go to work. Am I going to be well enough to work? He goes, if you've really never done heroin and you buy $20 worth, you're going to be fucked up. I said, all right, say no more. I gave him the 20. He gave me the 4 bags. I sniffed 2 of them, went home, got changed, went to work, sniffed the other 2. I was there for about a half hour, and I said, wow, I'm too fucked up. I went and told my boss some story that I wasn't feeling good. I went home. Now, when I went home sick. I wasn't sick. I was really high. I went home, and my friend's sister, I was kind of talking to her. We were like kind of dating for a little bit at the time, but he didn't want us dating. He didn't want me talking to his sister or like dating her. So I actually got a phone call from her, and she goes, oh, what are you doing? I said, oh, I left work early. I don't feel good. I have a really bad headache. She goes, oh, why do you have a headache? I'm like, oh, I don't know. She goes, was it the heroin that you bought off of my brother? Click. And I was like, damn, yo, he got me. So he set me up with his sister, who was actually my wife's best friend. My wife, it's actually her best friend they do these horrible things to. But yeah, her brother set me up with the heroin so that she would break up. That says she would break up with me, and she did break up with me, right? She did break up with me, and then I talked my way back. I'm a good car salesman, so I car salesman my way back into it. And I said, hey, give me another chance. I'm a good guy. I'll quit doing drugs right now.
She deserved so much
better. Right.
So
So I told her, I talked to her to give me another chance. And I go over there for the first time for like hanging out since the heroin incident. And she tested me, and I failed miserably. She had left a $10 bill on her counter, on her dresser. Right. And I'm like about to leave. And I see the $10 bill. I'm like $10. And like my junkiness couldn't handle it. I was like overload. I'm like, oh my God, I gotta take the money. So I take the $10. I fucking leave. I'm not even halfway down the street, and I get a text message saying that the $10 were intentionally left there to see if I had really changed or if I would steal the $10. I stole the $10. I went out. You know what I did with that $10? I bought a single line of cocaine for my Coke Connect. I'm like, I only got $10. Can I get a line? I bought a $10 line off my Coke Connect. And it cost me my girlfriend at the time. I cashed it out for $10, which I then cashed out the $10 for 1 line of cocaine. And that's how that ended. Yeah, I was doing bad things.
Isn't it amazing how fucking stupid we are when we're addicts, the shit we do?
I didn't even think twice about it. Like, now I look back on it and think, oh my God, how can I do these things? But like at the time, like I wasn't even thinking twice about it. I actually, in some sick way, thought that all this shit was funny, which is horrible. But at the time, I was so deep in addiction that I looked at it like, this is hilarious. Like I was like some like untouchable drug addict. My wife is here next to me in the car, and she says that her best friend still doesn't trust me because of the $10 incident. But
well, yeah, I mean, it's understandable. That's understandable. I mean, some people, they're hard pressed to believe we actually change, but she'll come around. All we can do is be straight and show people. Say again.
She's seen that have been coming around, that that I treat my wife really well and take care of her the best that I can. So she's already started coming around to it. It was a long time ago. She knows about drug addiction. She's had drug addiction run rampant in her family already. She knows about drug addiction, so she knows that wasn't the real me that was doing these types of horrible things. So all is in time. Took about how many years? Took like 10 years, but finally after 10 years have been somewhat forgiven.
So when did you realize you needed to get, well, tell me a little bit about your overdoses and stuff. Any near-death experiences? Well, I guess they're all near-death experiences.
My first overdose was a 5-day coma, so I was as near to death as I've ever come. hit rock bottoms. I went to detox and rehab in my hometown area. Then I went to a sober house program in Boston, which is like an area away, like an hour away from the area I grew up in. So I went to the sober house in Boston. I had my most clean time of all time, which was, I think I had like 2 or 3 months clean and sober. I got kicked out of the sober house because I was paying someone to do my chores. And then someone told on me, I got kicked out. I only lasted about a week without being in the program until I talked myself into doing a line of heroin. I went out, I got $60 worth of heroin. I had one giant line of it. After being 2 to 3 months off of everything, I sniffed a $60 line of heroin. I went to bed Sunday night. I woke up on Wednesday night in the ICU, and they said that I had overdosed on heroin. I didn't even remember doing heroin. It took me a couple of days to put the pieces together. But yeah, I was in a 5-day coma from that relapse. And the only reason that I'm still here today to tell this story was my roommate who let me move in after I got kicked out of sober house. He let me move in. He said, no drugs. I said, no problem. And he wanted to wake me up because we both worked at the dealership and we're on the same schedule. We're on the same sales team, right? There's a team A, a team B. You know how it goes in the car business. So we're both on team A. He goes to wake me up because we got to go to work, and I wasn't waking up. And then he called the ambulance. They Narcan me a couple times. That didn't bring me back. And I woke up about, like I said, about 5 days later, from Sunday until Wednesday. I woke up in that ICU, fired from my job, kicked out of my coworker's apartment. My sister in the hospital crying that her brother can't get it together, and now he's starting to overdose. That was my first overdose. It was a big one. It was a 5-day coma. And then I also had a one day where I got fired on my day off at the dealership, where I overdosed, got fired, went home, got more shit, overdosed on my couch. Landlord's about to kick me out. And then I went to go overdose for a third time, but I lost my last bag. Someone had stolen it, luckily, or I'd probably be dead. Someone stole my last bag that I kept overdosing on. So all these things were like near-death experiences. If my roommate didn't have the same work schedule as I had, I'd be dead. If some lady wasn't walking her dog on the next occasion, because she found me, I was OD'd on the street near Boston, just on the street. She was walking her dog and see me, called an ambulance, and they came and they saved me. So I've had a few near-death experiences. All of them are heroin related.
So tell me about when you decided you needed to get your shit together and get better.
That's an easy one. There was jail. I went to jail with nobody, no friends left, no family left. My family wasn't talking to me. All the bridges were burned and then reburned and then reburned again. So all the bridges were gone. I went to jail alone as a heroin addict. And that's where I made the change, because I was in there, and while I was in there, I realized that as the drugs came out of me, I realized, like, it started dawning on me, like, I'm 32 years old. I'm in Worcester jail. I have nobody, no money on my books, and I needed to change. And I knew that if I didn't stay clean when I got out of jail, that I was going to die, because I've had all these near-death experiences leading up to it, and they kept getting progressively worse and worse, that if I didn't get it together when I got out of jail, that I knew I was a goner, and that fear kept me on track for a long time.
So how long were you in jail? You said 3 months?
Just a summer in jail 6 summers ago. Worcester jail. It's 23 hours lockdown in that particular jail. The jail was built in the 70s, and there was no air conditioning. So that's where I learned my lesson. I sweated it out in that jail cell, and that's where I learned my lesson was out of necessity and out of desperation. That's where I got the gift of desperation, was in jail.
I can't believe, I couldn't imagine, I should say, what it's like to be in lockdown 23 hours a day. I mean, I think jail is a terrible thing to lock people. I mean, it's hard because you do need a place to send people that just don't want to conform to society. I'm not saying you have to conform to everything, but you can't go around killing people. You can't go around robbing people.
That's
so
right.
There are some places where we need to put these people, but I say to myself, is that the best form of rehabilitation? Let's just throw a bunch of criminals together, leave them to their own devices where they're stabbing each other, robbing each other, raping each other, and then we hope the guy gets better.
Well, here's the funny thing about that. Funny you say that, which is I got into multiple detoxes. I got into multiple rehabs, 30-day rehabs, CSSs, TSSs. I've done all that. And I always get it together for a few weeks and then immediately start to relapse. where that little bit of jail time I did, something changed where, you know what? I needed more than just rehab and I needed more than just detox for it to stick. And for me, jail did it. I'm not saying you have to go to jail to get your life together or clean up your act. Hopefully you don't. But for me, there is no other way. There's no other way. I would have kept using until the bitter end.
So what did you do when you came out of jail?
Came out of jail, I was on strict probation. I had to, the reason I got out and didn't do like 3 years I was facing, they gave me a chance to pass a 1 year probation with the sober house program. I did that. And if I messed up my probation, I was going back, I think facing something like 3 to 5 if I violated my probation. So keep in mind, my record clean time was only 2 to 3 months. So now I have to stay clean and sober for a whole year. And I have no idea how I'm going to be able to stay clean and sober for a whole year because I never made it more than a few months. So when I got out, what I did was I called some of my friends I used to get high with from my hometown, and they're all doing the recovery thing. And I asked them what to do, and they told me to go to a meeting. And I'm like, a meeting? What's that going to do? And they're like, well, you know, your own decisions have kind of gotten you where you're at. So why don't you take some advice for once? So I'm like, okay. I started going to meetings, and then they told me to get a sponsor. I did the sponsor. I worked the steps with my sponsor. And that was the change I needed. Was I was so scared to go back to jail that's what gave me the gift of desperation to do things that I previously was against doing. I got this on my own. I don't need a sponsor. I don't need meetings. I don't need anything. And it always turned out bad in the end. So yeah, jail is not for everybody. But when you go there, you have a choice. You're going to go there, you go door number 1 or door number 2. Door number 1, I had this kid a couple of cells down from me that every day he talked about he can't wait to get out so he can get high, right? So he's meeting new connects. He's meeting guys in jail. Oh, your cousin sells dope. I'm going to call him when I get out. And like setting up dope deals when he got out. Whereas when I was in there, I was totally dead set against staying away from drugs so I didn't die. I started reading the big book on my own in my jail cell just because I was bored. And then I actually went through the first couple of steps on my own, which is totally not what you're supposed to do. But I was in jail. I'm like, I'm on step 4 now. But, you know, when I got out, I started over and did it the right way. But I was in jail doing the steps by myself in the cell because I knew that if I didn't get it together this last time, that I was a goner. I was definitely going to die, or I was going to be back in jail. Neither one of those things seemed appetizing to me at all. So I did the change that I had to do it. I listened to people that had solid sobriety foundations and worked a solid program.
So your first place you went was AA or NA?
First place I ever did was NA. That was my first go around, and the one that stuck was when I went to AA. AA stuck more than NA did for me, and it's different for everybody. And I don't discriminate against either one. I think they both have their good parts and their not so good parts. But I've done them both, man. I've done any type of rehab, detox, AA, NA, therapy. Nothing worked except for jail, unfortunately.
And you're not the first person to tell me that. I've had people that said they were, like you said, that they were kind of happy they ended up going to jail because it got them clean. Because basically they had no other choice. I mean, I guess you do because it's not hard to get drugs in jail.
No, I turned down free heroin in jail. I made a couple of drop-offs on the block, and the guy goes, all right, here, take that. I'm like, what is it? He goes, it's heroin. I said, it was like a gang leader, so I was nervous. I looked at him, I'm like, dude, I was like, I can't take that. I said, can I just get food instead? He goes, yeah. He's like, no problem. Because I told the gang leader guy, I said, if I can't stay clean in jail, I can't stay clean when I get out. And if I don't stay clean when I get out, I'm definitely going to die. And I told him about all my overdoses. I told him about all my crazy drug stories. And I didn't know how he was going to take it, me turning down free drugs. But what he did was instead of giving me the $40 bag for free, a heroin, which was like probably a speckle, like a jail size heroin bag is like a speckle anyways. But he gave me $80 worth of commissary. So
that's nice.
That was like one of the lights turned on. I'm doing the right thing. Things are starting to go better. Even though I'm in jail, I'm already starting to make better decisions.
Yeah. So getting towards the end here, what do you do to stay sober nowadays? How's your life nowadays? It seems like you've been through a lot.
Yeah, I have been. My life's done a complete 180. I just got married a month and a half ago to my beautiful wife. We've been together for 5 years. So she met me when I was still at the sober house. 2017, I was still at the sober house. I had no driver's license yet because I just got out of jail, no car. I was working a minimum wage job. I wasn't in the dealership life yet. I had a get well job, and that's how we met. And she said that she didn't care about material things, and that she really she really respected and believed in me, in what I was doing, because she had an uncle that had passed away due to drugs, I think heroin too. So she didn't look at it like it was a negative. She looked at it as a positive, and things went great. We moved to Charlotte, North Carolina. We've been here ever since. I'm married now. I've been working the car business down here the whole time. So 5 years in the car business down here in North Carolina. What I do is I do my YouTube channel. It helps me relive all these things. Helps me not want to actually go out there and relive them like for real, where I can just tell my drug stories on my channel, and it's very therapeutic for me to do that. And then also, if someone's like a newcomer, someone just starting off, I had this young kid at the dealership, and he had been struggling with drugs, and my boss asked me to help him, and we went to a meeting probably about a month ago. We went to a meeting, and we keep in contact because he's just getting started. Early recoveries can be very difficult, so I just try to be there for others. I try to be there for fans of my channel, subscribers of my channel, and I'm in contact with lots of them. And some of them are on methadone, some are on Suboxone, some are on nothing, some are still using, some are 5 years clean. So we don't discriminate on my channel. Everybody's story is different, and everybody's story is important.
Yeah, so tell us more about your channel. Let's give that a little bit of a sales pitch. Tell us where we find you. Tell us what platforms you're on. Tell me
Yeah,
about
so about
first of all,
most
why'd you decide to start it? Where did the idea come from?
the idea came from, we're at the COVID stay-at-home orders where you couldn't go anywhere except for, like, I think the grocery store when COVID was like going crazy
Yeah.
2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So we had just gotten engaged. My wife and I, we had just gotten engaged, and the government was sending unemployment money. They said, "All right, don't go to work, but we're going to send you a bunch of money." I'm like, "Okay," and but you can't go anywhere. I'm like, "Okay." So I'm sitting there, and like government's sending me checks of like over $1,000 for unemployment, and I'm sitting there like, "All right, what do I do?" And my drug addiction side is starting to go crazy. Like, "Oh my God, the government's sending free money. You know what you should do?" I'm like, "Whoa." I started getting the whispers, like maybe I should go get high. And then my wife had the idea. I bet you lots of people are struggling right now with the COVID to try to get clean or stay clean, just like you are struggling right now mentally. She goes, maybe start a YouTube channel telling some of your crazy stories. Maybe that could help someone else. And I just started messing around one day, just putting my worst of stories up there, the craziest, worst things that I had done. And people really took a liking to it. And the channel has been growing. I've been doing it for about 2 years. Birdman Drug Stories on YouTube. Like, comment, subscribe. We're getting close to 1,000 subscribers. I've been going at it for 2 years, trying to get to that 1,000, and we're almost there. So that's why I started the channel, is because I figured other people were struggling with the COVID stay-at-home orders and all the crap going on in the world at the time. Where I figured, if it doesn't help anybody else, maybe it will at least help myself. And I've been lucky and blessed enough where it's helped not only keep me on track, it's helped out people all over the country. I got subscribers that check in from Chicago, St. Louis, San Antonio, you name it, all over the map, and all speaking highly of me and praise about all these accomplishments I've been able to do. And I tell them that I'm not nobody special. I'm nobody different. I got lucky, but then I made the changes I had to make to restart my life. It's hard to restart your life, and it ain't easy. It ain't supposed to be easy. But that's kind of why I started my channel. Birdman Drug Stories is an open forum for people in all forms of recovery. We don't discriminate. If you're on methadone, hey, if it didn't work for me, doesn't mean it might not work for you, or Suboxone. None of that stuff worked for me for the maintenance drugs, but I don't hold, there's a big stigma to some folks that use it. Not on my channel. Everybody's welcome, man.
That's awesome, dude. That's awesome. I'm happy
We're
for
gonna
you.
have you come on and tell a story next.
Oh, awesome. I'd be happy to. I'd be absolutely happy to. Yeah, we'll set that up after we're done here. So it looks like you got your shit together, man. It looks like, like you said, you got a beautiful wife, got your life together, got a job, making money, and most importantly, you are sober.
Yeah, that's
Like you
most
said,
important.
without that, we got nothing. Without that, we have absolutely nothing.
Amen.
Yeah, it's sad. So let me ask you this: did you have anything else you want to throw in or add?
No, just never give up. If it was 10 years ago, he gave me a snapshot of what my life is like today, I would say that you're the one that needs to be drug tested because you're obviously high as a kite to give me a snapshot of my life. But things can change. They're not going to change overnight. You just stack up the good days. Win the day. That's why I tell people that I work with, like recovery shit. You don't have to get your whole life back in a day. Just win the day, right? Do more positive than you do negative, and win the day. And if you keep stacking up winning days, eventually your life will change. But it's not going to be overnight. But it can be done. Like I said, I'm nobody special. I'm lucky to even be alive. So if I can do it, my message is anybody can do it.
Awesome, brother. That's great news for you, and that's great advice for everybody else.
Thanks, man.
So I appreciate you coming on the podcast today, and do me a favor and sit tight. And for everybody watching and listening, if you like what you heard and saw, go below and give us a like. Also subscribe to see when we upload new videos. You can check us out on Twitter, Reddit, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and Tumblr. And we're on a few more platforms. You can find us if you look. I also suggest checking out our website, www.addicts-anonymous.com. There you'll find plenty of resources as well as free literature. So I hope you enjoyed today, and until next time.